The Texas sun cast a golden glow over Cheap East Meat Market, a humble beacon amidst the sprawling town of Taquaria, where dreams and destinies often collided. It was here, on a sweltering afternoon, that Angie Diaz first encountered Jared Diaz. The air inside was thick with the savory aroma of freshly cut meats, mingling with the faint scent of hope that clung to Angie, a young Nicaraguan immigrant whose eyes sparkled with ambition. Her laughter, like the tinkling of wind chimes, echoed through the aisles as she exchanged stories with Jared, an easygoing soul whose warmth seemingly promised sanctuary. Yet, beneath the laughter and shared aspirations, an ominous shadow began to weave its insidious thread through the fabric of their budding relationship. An imperceptible shift that would soon metamorphose into a chilling tale of love and betrayal. The afternoon sun hung high, casting long shadows across the dusty streets of Taquaria, Texas. It was one of those sweltering days where the heat seemed to shimmer off the asphalt, almost like a mirage teasing the eyes. Amongst the labyrinthine aisles of Cheap East Meat Market, the air was thick with the rich aroma of freshly ground spices and the metallic scent of blood, a sensory medley that had become a comforting constant in Angie Diaz's daily routine. Angie, a vibrant young woman of 21, navigated this space with a grace that belied her years. Her laughter, bright and clear, echoed like a melody against the backdrop of slicing and weighing, a testament to her irrepressible spirit. Each day was an unspoken promise to herself, a commitment to the dreams she had carried with her from Nicaragua, dreams of prosperity, of family, of a future unburdened by the struggles of her past. It was here, amidst the bustling hum and chatter, that Angie first laid eyes on Jared Diaz. He was new to the market, his presence marked by an unassuming demeanor and a ready smile that seemed to draw people in effortlessly. Jared's eyes, a soft shade of blue, carried with them a certain gentleness that seemed worlds apart from the hardened edges of Taquaria. He was the kind of person whose very essence suggested a certain stability and a tribute that resonated deeply with Angie. As they worked side by side, their interactions were initially marked by the simple camaraderie of shared labor. Yet, there was a magnetism between them, an unspoken connection that wove through their conversations like an invisible thread pulling them closer. Angie found solace in Jared's presence, an inexplicable comfort that spoke volumes. For a young woman who had left her homeland behind, the prospect of companionship was a beacon of hope. Jared's easygoing nature was a refreshing contrast to Angie's own resilience and determination. She had always been the pillar of her family, the eldest of 4 siblings, each decision driven by the weight of responsibility. Her mother's battle with cancer was a constant shadow in her life, the need to provide financial support a relentless drive that saw Angie juggling multiple jobs. Yet, in Jared, she found a kindred spirit, someone who seemed to understand her burdens without the need for words. Their relationship blossomed under the fluorescent lights of Cheap East. Each shared lunch break a step closer to a world where their paths were intertwined. They laughed, they dreamed, and together, they painted a picture of a future that seemed impossibly bright. To Angie, Jared represented more than just a partner. He was a promise of a life where her dreams could take root and flourish. As their bond deepened, Jared's proposal came like a splash of color against the monochrome canvas of their routine lives. Angie's acceptance was fervent, her heart full of hope at the prospect of a shared future. The engagement heralded a new chapter, one imbued with excitement and the promise of security. Their wedding day was a tapestry of joy, woven with the laughter and love of friends and family who gathered to witness the union of 2 souls. Yet, beneath the surface of their idyllic life, subtle shifts began to stir. The cabin they moved into post-marriage, nestled on the property of Jared's parents, was meant to be a sanctuary, a starting point from which to build their dreams. But the walls of the cabin held secrets, whispered fears, and private doubts that neither Angie nor Jared dared to voice. As weeks turned into months, the once effervescent Angie seemed to dim, her laughter less frequent, her eyes shadowed by a tiredness that seemed to deepen with each passing day. Her boss, Veronica Jimenez, noted the change with quiet concern, the bright girl she had come to admire appearing worn and weary. Yet, it was a transformation that seemed to defy explanation, an enigma she could not decipher. As the first month of their marriage slipped away, the facade of perfection began to crumble, revealing the fissures beneath. The promise of happiness, once so palpable, started to feel like a distant memory as Angie found herself standing at the precipice of an unsettling truth. January 11th, 2023, would cast a pall over the sleepy town, leaving its residents grappling with questions that seemed to beg for answers yet eluded understanding. The afternoon had begun with an ominous stillness, the kind of quiet that often precedes a storm. Angie, gentle and determined, went about her day with a resolute focus, her mind perhaps divided between her duties and the tumult that had crept into her life. The air outside was crisp, the winter chill biting yet invigorating, filling the lungs with a sharp clarity that contrasted starkly with the murky uncertainty she faced. Inside the confines of Chappie's meat market, the familiar hum of the refrigeration units provided a monotonous backdrop to Angie's routine. She moved with an efficiency born from necessity, her hands deftly arranging cuts of meat, the smell of raw flesh mingling with the tang of disinfectant. Her co-workers watched her with a mix of admiration and concern, aware of the burdens she carried, but feeling helpless to intervene. Her stoic demeanor was a mask, a veneer of normalcy that she hoped would shield her from prying eyes and probing questions. Yet, beneath her composed exterior, a tempest raged. The strains of her marriage, once subtle and ignorable, had become impossible to dismiss. Each interaction with Jared was fraught with tension, his mood swings unpredictable and his anger quick to ignite. Angie's mind was a whirl of emotion, fear intertwining with confusion and a lingering, desperate hope that things might somehow revert to the way they once were, a hope that was growing thinner each day, like ice melting beneath a relentless sun. She was conscious of the eyes of her co-workers, the unspoken concern that lingered in their glances. Angie had learned to navigate these interactions with careful deflection, offering smiles that never quite reached her eyes and assurances that were more wishful than true. Her thoughts frequently drifted to her mother in Nicaragua, the weight of her illness pressing heavily on Angie's conscience, amplifying the pressure to maintain a facade of strength and stability. While Angie labored away at the market, Jared's presence loomed in the background of her consciousness, a specter of volatility that haunted her every thought. His recent behavior had grown increasingly erratic, his actions unpredictable, and his temper frighteningly short. The surveillance footage that would later surface revealed a man teetering on the brink of control, a man who had lost his grasp on reason, driven by forces that those around him could only guess at. Outside, the late afternoon sun was beginning its slow descent, casting long, cold shadows across the parking lot. The sky was a canvas of muted grays and blues, the promise of twilight a subtle reminder of the inexorable passage of time. As the shadows lengthened, so did the sense of unease that permeated the air, a silent harbinger of the dark events that were about to unfold. In those final moments before the world shattered, Angie must have felt it, a shift, a premonition of the storm about to break. The sound of the door chime as Jared entered the market might have rung out like an alarm bell, its sharp notes slicing through the ambient noise. His presence was an intrusion, a crack in the fragile peace she clung to, and yet she could do little but brace herself for the impact of whatever was to come. The community of Waller County, nestled amidst fields and trees, was unprepared for the tragedy that was about to strike. The small-town rhythm, usually so steady, was about to be disrupted in the most violent of ways, leaving its residents to pick up the pieces and grapple with the painful aftermath of an unimaginable crime. As the sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the landscape into darkness, the stage was set for a sequence of events that would leave an indelible mark on all it touched, a tragic tale etched into the memory of those who lived to tell it. A macabre display of savagery. The eeriness of that January evening settled over the town like an unwelcome fog, seeping into the consciousness of its residents. As the news spread, disbelief morphed into a palpable tension, an undercurrent of fear that something so unfathomably brutal could happen in their midst. It was as if the shadows had grown longer and darker, consuming the familiar and turning it into a landscape of doubt and suspicion. The details of the crime scene were like shards of glass, each one cutting deeper into the collective psyche of Waller County. The cabin, which had once been a modest testament to young love and new beginnings, now stood as a grotesque monument to violence. The air inside was thick with the metallic scent of blood, clinging to the walls and floors, refusing to be washed away like the memories that would haunt those who entered. For the investigators, the scene was a visceral assault on the senses. Every sight, every smell was a reminder of the humanity lost in those final, frantic moments of life. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the whispers of the crime scene tape flapping in the cold wind and the distant hum of voices, laden with the weight of what they had witnessed. As they sifted through the evidence, each piece told a fragment of the story. A broken picture frame, a discarded kitchen knife, and the blood-stained bedding speaking to a struggle for survival that was both desperate and doomed. There was a chaos to the way the room was left, an unsettling testament to the fury unleashed by Jared in that terrifying outburst. Jared himself was an enigma, a young man whose face betrayed little of the tempest that must have raged within. During his confession, his voice was disturbingly calm, as if recounting a tale that bore no personal resonance. His eyes betrayed no hint of remorse, only a chilling detachment that left the officers in the interrogation room struggling to reconcile the boy they had known with the monster he had become. The psychological evaluation that followed would reveal a complex tapestry of mental health struggles and interpersonal conflict, threads of which had remained hidden beneath the surface until it was too late. But the question that haunted everyone was why. Why had he chosen that night, that moment to unravel so completely? What had ignited the firestorm that consumed him and obliterated Angie's future in an instant? In the days that followed, the town's intimate connections became a fragile web, each strand weakened by the corrosive effect of doubt and mistrust. Friends eyed each other warily. Families questioned long-held beliefs about their neighbors, and an unspoken question lingered. Could such violence have been prevented, or was it an inevitable eruption of a volatile mix of anger and despair? For Angie's family, the nightmare was a relentless torrent of grief, each wave more overpowering than the last. In Nicaragua, her mother's tears mingled with prayers that fell on seemingly indifferent ears, leaving her to grapple with the insurmountable void left by her daughter's absence. Meanwhile, Jared's parents were trapped in their own purgatory, their son's actions an unending source of shame and confusion, forcing them to face the harsh reality that love alone could not save him, or Angie, from the darkness that had ultimately claimed them both. As the trial loomed on the horizon, the community braced itself for more revelations, more pain. The courthouse, normally a solemn bastion of justice, would become a theater of heartbreak, where the lives of two families would be laid bare for all to see. In the end, the narrative of love turned to tragedy, of hope turned to horror, would mark Waller County forever, a stark reminder of the fragility of human life and the sometimes incomprehensible nature of human actions. The echoes of that fateful night would linger, a chilling specter that refused to be silenced. Dim, oppressive atmosphere inside the courthouse was tangible, wrapping around those who entered like a heavy, woolen cloak soaked in the rain of sorrow. The air seemed to thicken with each step further into the building, a silent testament to the gravity of the proceedings about to unfold. Angie's family, their faces a mosaic of grief and determination, sat huddled together, clutching one another as if trying to piece together the shattered remnants of their lives. Her mother, her eyes hollowed by nights spent in sleepless torment, tried to summon strength from the depths of her despair, but the weight of her loss seemed an insurmountable burden. Her father's trembling hands, once steady and sure, now betrayed the turmoil within as he clutched a worn photograph of Angie, a snapshot of happier times frozen forever in memory. As Jared was led into the courtroom, shackled and subdued, there was a collective intake of breath. His appearance was unremarkable, yet it was the starkness of his presence, a living reminder of the devastation he had wrought, that seemed to electrify the room. The whispers of disbelief and anger that buzzed quietly among the attendees seemed to hang in the air like an ominous cloud, a muted chorus of the community's broken heart. The prosecutor, Sean G. Whitmore, stood with a purposeful resolve, his voice cutting through the tense silence like a blade. He recounted the horrific details of the case, painting a picture so vivid it was as if the walls themselves absorbed the horror, echoing it back in a timeless scream. Angie's dreams, her hopes, and the life she was carving out for herself were laid bare, each detail a tiny dagger twisting in the hearts of those who cherished her. Yet, amid the litany of facts, it was the revelations about Jared's mental state that struck a particularly chilling note. Behind the facade of a love gone wrong, there unfurled a tapestry of escalating violence and unchecked mental instability. His previous run-ins with the law, an arrest for driving while intoxicated, during which he had lashed out at officers, now took on a menacing significance. These were not isolated incidents, but rather dark harbingers of the tragedy that was to come, ignored or unseen until it was far too late. The courtroom was suspended in a charged silence as the judge deliberated over the proposed plea agreement. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to grow louder, each tick a reminder of time lost, of a life so brutally and irrevocably altered. Angie's family watched, their expressions a complex weave of hope and dread, as the judge finally turned his gaze toward Jared. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Jared, his face a mask of resignation, uttered the words that would seal his fate, a guilty plea. It was a moment both solemn and anticlimactic, the monstrous finality of it tempered by the hollow realization that no amount of punishment could bring Angie back. As the sentence was pronounced, a life exchanged for years behind bars, there was a subtle shift in the courtroom. For Angie's family, it was a bittersweet closure, a step toward healing that still felt inadequate against the vastness of their loss. The community, who had clung to hope for answers, faced the sobering reality that some questions might never find resolution. Outside, the world continued in its indifferent rhythm, the sun casting long shadows on the courthouse steps as Angie's family emerged. In the midst of their grief, they were met by an outpouring of support, an embrace of empathy from strangers and friends alike who understood that healing would be a slow, uncertain journey. In the end, the narrative of Angie's life became more than a cautionary tale. It was a call to action, a stark reminder of the unseen battles waged behind closed doors and the urgent need for compassion and awareness. The echoes of her story would linger, a haunting reminder of the preciousness of life and the dark complexities of the human heart. The day of Jared's arrest dawned with an unsettling quiet, the kind that forebodes a storm. The air was thick with humidity, clinging like a damp shroud over Waller County. Law enforcement vehicles, their presence a grim beacon, lined the driveway of the Dykes residence. As officers approached the door, their footsteps muffled by the oppressive heat, they were acutely aware of the gravity of their task, to bring justice for Angie's untimely demise. Inside, Jared sat at the kitchen table, his eyes hollow and distant, as if the enormity of his actions had already consumed him. The clinking of handcuffs echoed in the small room, a sharp contrast to his resigned silence. There was no struggle, no last-minute plea for mercy, just the resigned acceptance of a man who knew he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. As he was led away, the weight of his guilt seemed to hang in the air, mingling with the scent of stale coffee and burnt toast. The pursuit of justice was relentless, a symphony of determined voices, prosecutors, investigators, advocates, all united by the singular purpose of giving Angie a voice from beyond the grave. District Attorney Whitmore, Known for her tenacity and unwavering commitment to justice, spearheaded the prosecution with a fiery resolve. Her presence in court was commanding, her words a piercing indictment of Jared's cruelty. Each piece of evidence presented was a brushstroke painting a vivid picture of a life cut down in its prime, of a future abruptly erased by senseless violence. The trial itself, a spectacle of legal maneuvering and emotional testimony, laid bare the fragility of human relationships and the devastating consequences of unchecked rage. Angie's family, seated in the front row, bore witness to the unraveling of the man they once knew, their faces etched with a grief that was both raw and dignified. Every testimony, every revelation of Jared's past brutality was a dagger, reopening wounds that might never fully heal. Outside the courthouse, the Texas sun blazed defiantly, its relentless heat mirroring the intensity within. Media vans sprawled across the street, their satellite dishes poised like watchful sentinels. Reporters, armed with cameras and notepads, captured the unfolding drama, their voices weaving Angie's story into the fabric of the nation's consciousness. Inside, sensory details were both vivid and jarring. The sterile smell of the courtroom, the hollow echo of footsteps on polished wood, the murmur of hushed conversations, they all blended into a symphony of tension and anticipation. The jurors, their faces a study in concentration, weighed the evidence with an impartiality that belied the emotional weight of their task. When the verdict was finally read, a palpable wave of emotion surged through the room. Jared was sentenced to 40 years, a period that seemed both fleeting and interminable against the backdrop of life stolen. The courtroom erupted in a mixture of subdued relief and silent tears. For Angie's family, it was a bittersweet moment, a fleeting balm for the unending ache of loss. As Jared was led away, there was no satisfaction, only a quiet acknowledgement of justice served. In the aftermath, the community rallied, turning Angie's tragedy into a beacon for change. Her story, a haunting testament to the perils of domestic violence, became a catalyst for vital conversations. Community groups mobilized, their efforts invigorated by the urgency of prevention and the hope of transformation. As the dust settled, Angie's legacy emerged, not as a mere victim, but as an enduring symbol of resilience and the enduring quest for justice. Her life, though tragically brief, ignited a movement, a call to action that would ripple through time, urging society to protect its most vulnerable and fight tirelessly against the darkness that claimed her. The oppressive shadows of abuse. In the courtroom's heavy silence, justice's relentless march was palpable. The clink of handcuffs, the sterile scent of paperwork, and the hushed murmurs enveloped the room. Angie's legacy whispered through, a testament that even in darkness, truth surfaces. Justice, though delayed, found its mark, echoing an unyielding promise.